Good morning. We're here with Claire Gavaghan from Derwent Training. How are you doing, Claire?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you very much for joining us today. So if you'd like to kick us off, get stuck in with a little bit of background as to who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike. Yes, I'm the Chief Executive at Derwent Training Association, which is based in Malton. We're an independent training provider, and we deliver apprenticeships in engineering and also leadership, as well as offering a number of online training opportunities for people who wish to upskill in all kinds of topics. We've been going since 1988, so we're celebrating 35 years next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Skills and Employability Board for York and North Yorkshire LEP. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. 35 years next year. That is a great achievement in business by anyone's standards. So the last few years, we always like to ask each person that we interview about the pandemic and the biggest impact that had on them. So what was the impact for you guys?
Well, as a training provider, you can imagine we had to shut just like everybody else. And yet the only income that an independent training provider is getting is government funding for training individuals and training apprenticeships. So you have to carry on in order to keep your income coming in. And that's difficult, particularly when you're delivering engineering apprenticeships, which relies very much on developing hand skills and people learning how to use machinery and produce things and so on and so forth. And apprenticeships obviously require you to go into the workplace as well, to carry out assessments, to carry out reviews. So the whole model of delivery just got thrown up in the air. We were very fortunate, some would call it serendipity, that about 3 months prior to us going into the pandemic, we changed our IT system over to Microsoft 365, which allowed us to start delivering remotely. So we actually shut on the 17th of March because we just said this is unsafe. And then we had 3 weeks of trying to go, how do we do this? And we went to remote learning. So we had to do a review of everything that we did, the curriculum and everything, and start teaching online. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, every teacher that's been through teacher training was never taught to deliver online, ever. So we will be very honest and go, it was very spiky. It was incredibly difficult. You know, we were all told this will be 3 weeks. No, obviously it wasn't. So we got better as it went along. So there was a lot of challenges to get the apprentices to engage with us because many had been furloughed. Many did not have IT at home. The level of IT poverty in York and North Yorkshire was shocking. So we spent a lot of time driving around, handing out our IT facilities so people could continue with their learning. So there was an awful lot of challenges, not just for the delivery, but for managing people remotely and keeping on top of what was going on. We got there, and as soon as we could open safely, we did, but we did it with incredibly low numbers. So we kept our occupancy very, very low. And those closest to finishing came in first so they could do their practical skills. But it was a challenge, just like everybody else, that, you know, that constant, what money's coming in? Can we justify the money that's coming in because we're audited? The levels of communication at times dipped with employers because the people supervising apprentices, they were furloughed.
Yeah.
You know, it was incredibly difficult. Let's not kid ourselves. What we went through was nothing compared to care homes, hospitals, emergency services, and everything else. But it was difficult keeping a business running. Very difficult keeping the business.
I can imagine. Yeah. So,
and a very lonely, extremely lonely.
Yeah, especially being the head of that business, and all eyes are on you to make decisions at times where you don't know what's happening from one day to the next, literally. Yeah,
I have a very good board of directors, non-executive directors, and they would keep in touch. They frequently would say to me, "No, the CEO's been through this, Claire. No one knows how to do this. Just keep going. Just keep going." I think some of the decisions we made in hindsight weren't the right ones. But many were, and we got through it. I think when you sit back and go, we got through it, we made a profit in those 2 years as well. But there's things, you know, even the stupidest things you forget, and forgive me for using this expression, we felt a little bit ripped off, because we were still getting charged for things like collection of our rubbish. I'd be like, there wasn't any rubbish, and they'll go, yeah, but we kept turning up. You know, we were shut, the world was shut. What were you doing?
Yeah.
But obviously that was their business model. So, you know, it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time for every business, but we're still standing.
Were there any actions from that experience that you obviously were forced to take, but then stuck with the business, you know, online learning and that kind of been a positive impact that have been retained?
We don't as a rule do online learning, just by the very nature of what we're delivering. In terms of our business model for our staff, like everybody, we realized that remote working can work. Here I am sat in my home, as I said to you when we first came on the call, because I've had a rotten cold, and it works. So we have said to staff, among other things, if you're not teaching that day, if you need to be at home, and let's face it, we all have washes that break down or dental appointments that we need to go to, don't come in. Tell us. Let's communicate. But if you can do your job from home that day, do your job from home that day. And I think that's given people a flexibility to order their lives better. Let's face it, pandemic changed everybody's views, turned, you know, our views towards work, our work-life balance. We all sat back and took another look at that. So I think keeping that as an option for individuals has been very much appreciated. And it also, Mike, made us look at how do we reward our staff? Because there isn't an infinite pot of money to keep giving out to people. And whilst we have been able to do increments in salaries, we actually introduced a 9-day fortnight on the back of the pandemic. So we're in 2 groups, so we're open every day, but twice a month, you're not working on a Friday, you have a long weekend. We didn't reduce salaries. We didn't say make up the hours. We just said, you're not working that day. It's not out your leave entitlement. You're just not expected at work. And I honestly think if it hadn't been for the pandemic, we wouldn't have looked so closely at that time at our terms and conditions. And it wasn't that we don't look after the welfare of staff, but it actually became more of a priority. And we introduced it for 1 year, and it's not going anywhere. Everybody loves it.
Brilliant. It's a good share on that and a good learning. So what does the future look like from this point then for you guys, and what do you see as the main challenges that you can predict at the moment?
Derwent Training relies on other businesses taking on apprentices or putting their staff through apprenticeships. The uncertainty in their markets impacts on us. Many manufacturing businesses and those involved in engineering are impacted by Brexit. I'm not going to shy away from saying that. Many would export to the EU, and they're saying just can't now for many different reasons, which I haven't got long enough. You've only given me half an hour. I could wax lyrical. That's an issue because they're our pipeline. And if they can't take on staff or they can't invest in their training, that's an issue. So that's been a big factor. Many businesses have had to cut back because of the pandemic. Some, not many in engineering, some have folded. So there's a whole list of reasons. And then you go, and the cost of living. So, you know, we are no different to another business. We have a supply chain. Our supply chain is other businesses. If they are struggling, then it makes things a little bit more difficult for us. We're actually in a good position, which I'm very pleased about. And we have a level of comfort in what we've been able to build up. So we're very fortunate in that. But the challenges remain convincing businesses that apprenticeships are a way of investing in their own talent and developing productivity and growth for their own businesses. And apprenticeships are still seen by too many as a second-class education. And I and everybody in the business works very hard to say absolutely not. And that starts down at school age. And you know what, training, if you like, the parents to understand that actually this is a very valuable and fantastic route to follow. So there's always those challenges. But I think the marketplace is very difficult at the minute. Very, very difficult at the minute.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a number of challenges across the different sectors for different businesses. But yeah, it's about that investment mindset, I think, as you make and having that perception changed of what an apprenticeship can be and can do for the person and the business.
Well, I always say when people, you know, there is government funding to support apprenticeships, etc., etc., etc. But I say to businesses, what will your business look like if you do not invest in your staff? And some say, well, you know, if I invest in them, they might leave. Well, if you don't invest in them, they might leave. You know, I think it's a better option to invest. And most of us, I would suggest, haven't spent our working lives at just one particular employer. People do move. And that's just a fact of life, but you should still be investing in people.
Yes, an abundance mindset as opposed to a restrictive mindset. Yeah. Thank you for that share. So in terms of being a business owner, what would you say is your biggest learning lesson you've had to date, if there's one that stands out?
Well, I should say I don't own the business. It's a not-for-profit.
As a CEO,
yeah.
Being in business, any experience shared is a good one.
The biggest thing I've learned, that honesty does pay off in the end. I think sometimes they're very difficult messages to give, whether that's to your staff or to your clients. You need to be honest. And I won't go into all the details, but I started at Derwent in 2019. And I found some things that needed to be altered straight away, some things that weren't right. And I had to go and speak to employers about it. And I was very honest about what I had found and how we could put that right, and the impact that it would have on their employees at that moment. And they were some difficult messages to give. It's fair to say that in some areas, I got a great deal of pushback. None of the issues I found were my fault. I was trying to put them right. But if I hadn't have been honest with internally and externally, I genuinely don't think the business would have survived. If I'd have been an external auditor looking at it, I probably would have shut the business. And I'm comfortable saying that. My chairman would be comfortable with me saying that. So being honest with people is always the best policy, within lines of confidentiality and all that's a given.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, well, I just don't think ethically you should be in business if you can't be honest. Yeah. You've got to abide by regulations, rules, and everything else. And if something happens that contravenes that, intentionally or otherwise, play with a straight bat, and work to put it right. Because in the end, good will well out, and you will be successful.
Good share. Thank you very much for that. So asking you this one is very apt in terms of what your role is and what you do. In terms of perhaps giving advice to someone who's starting out their career or in business, a young person, is there a piece of advice that you could offer that sort of stands out as a way to someone, say, starting in the job market, or as they wanted to go into business for themselves?
I think, there's probably several things that come to mind here, but I think if you're starting a business, then scan the environment first, and do your research. And it's the same if you're already in an existing business and you want to bring a new product in. You've got to do your research. Plan your route, but be flexible, because that route will not be a straight path, will it? It will never be a
Nothing ever
path.
is.
Never. I moved back to this area after being in another part of the country for 25 years. And although I'm born and bred in the Northeast, I didn't have a network because of that. So build your network. Build your network is very important. Be humble, because you're going to make mistakes. Absolutely going to make mistakes. And work ethically all the time. That to me is so important. Put that at the center. Have that as a core value for your business. We will be honest. We will work ethically. And if a business decides not to work with you because of your values around that, fine. I think that says more about them. So I think being true to yourself, doing your research, and be prepared to flex, be prepared to go, oh, that's not working. Let's do this. Have that contingency plan built in. So you don't hit that brick wall and go, oh, I never thought about this.
Great advice. Thank you very much. Some pieces of gold in there, listening to that. So what inspires you to do what you do? It might be an obvious question, but I don't want to assume your answers. Feel free to let us know what your inspiration is to do what you do.
Well, my background is education. I've worked in education now for over 30 years, and it's always been post-16 education. And I could go on about the stories of when I was a child, writing reports for my toys as a kid, and probably I was destined to go into education and all that. I almost think like I fell into it for lots of reasons. But I do enjoy teaching. I don't get in a classroom now. My role has completely changed. Like everybody that goes up that greasy pole, you move further away from the job you were first doing.
Yeah.
But I think there are days when you remind yourself, you can look at individuals and think, you are now doing what you are doing because of what you did with us, whether that's at Derwent Training or other organisations I've worked at. We held our annual awards in September. Yes, in September. And we invite the award winners and they bring their guests. And at the end of it, when we're doing the photos and all this kind of thing, I was talking to some parents and I noticed that the mum was crying. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, you know, are you okay? And her son, who was 24, he's employed now, he's an apprentice. Whilst he was at school, he never achieved his maths and English GCSEs. And in fact, sadly, he was told, his parents were told, that he wouldn't achieve anything. And I said, no way. Really? Is that what they said? She said, yeah, that he wouldn't amount to anything. And here he was winning an award, primarily because he had then achieved his maths and English functional skills, and he was making such good progress on his engineering apprenticeship. And she said, I never thought this would happen. That kind of thing inspires you and reminds you why we're in education. And there's an awful lot of people, sorry, this is a small bugbear of mine. There's an awful lot of people who look at people who work in education at whatever level, mm-hmm. and they go, it's not really a real job. Sorry. Of course it's a real job. The reason, Mike, you're sat where you are is because you learned to read and write. You mm-hmm. went through education, etc., etc. And I think sometimes in this country, too often, we don't appreciate the value of education. And we do not appreciate the people who day in, day out deliver it in whatever guise. So hearing that mum on that evening was heartwarming. And then you realise those are the stories that get you up to go and change lives, because that's what every teacher in the country is doing, and everybody who works in education supporting them, that's what they're doing.
Giving people a foundation to progress, very positive opportunities through education. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Brilliant. So lastly, in terms of any latest news around Derwent Training, anything that you'd like to share, perhaps even just the website to go to if people are interested in finding out more about what you do?
Well, the website's derwenttraining.co.uk. It's very straightforward. We do deliver apprenticeships, as I say, in engineering, and we also do leadership, team leadership. And I would say this to anybody who does sit down and watch it and has made it this far. Most people end up in a management supervision role purely by accident, probably by being good at the job they were doing before, and it's been pushed on them. Mm-hmm. But just imagine what a bit of support and training and development could do for your company. So do think about apprenticeships or any training in and around team leaderships and management. I don't think we invest enough in that. And as one plug, we do offer short CPD courses in a range of things, from health and safety, customer care, and so on and so forth, which are on our website. They're from as little as £5. They are excellent programs. They're supported by Highfield and an awarding body. So do check that out. Some will take half an hour, some will take longer. But it's there to constantly invest in your staff and update them. And we need to do that. We absolutely need to do that if we're going to have growth and productivity in the region.
Something that's definitely needed as we look forward. Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Claire. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. All the best with it, and I hope it continues to grow.
Thanks, Mike.